Apple isn't as innocent as they'd have you believe. The IT giant urged its worldwide supply chain to cut greenhouse gas emissions and pursue decarbonization holistically. Apple has also unveiled new programs and investments geared toward advancing community-based climate solutions and decarbonizing the global economy. But guess what? It turns out they're not as green as they pretend to be. Join us in this video as we tell you all about it. Starting with, what measures is Tim Cook taking to decarbonize? According to Apple CEO Tim Cook, fighting climate change continues to be one of Apple's top goals. The tech giant is continuing its collaboration with suppliers to achieve carbon neutrality in Apple's supply chain by 2030, as they're determined to make a stronger impact in this area. The corporation is laser-focused on accomplishing its lofty objective of becoming carbon neutral throughout its entire global supply chain and the life cycle of every product. And get this. According to Apple, its global corporate operations have been carbon neutral since 2020. So, as part of its supplier engagement program, Apple is working with its global supply chain to push for progress toward achieving carbon neutrality for its Apple-related corporate operations. The business also claims to urge its suppliers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Through its clean energy program, the corporation is also empowering suppliers with various free online learning tools and in-person training that'll enable them to fulfill their obligations and go even further. This will also make it possible for Apple to collaborate closely with its suppliers and regional partners to find practical options for removing carbon from the atmosphere. Also, with clean energy charging, customers in the US can now contribute to reducing the carbon footprint of iPhones. This will be made available in the US starting this month through iOS 16 and will look at the source of electricity during anticipated charge periods to optimize for cleaner energy sources like solar or wind. Next, we'll tell you all about Apple's big green goals. These include the pledge from more than 200 suppliers to use renewable energy sources for Apple products such as wind and solar, and the yearly creation of 3,000 gigawatts of new renewable energy across Europe to reduce the amount of electricity used by Apple devices. Apple is also seeking to save 1 million metric tons of carbon through its Restore Fund by 2025. Another significant achievement was that as of 2015, Apple has already reduced its emissions by 40%. The tech giant intends to invest 3,000 gigawatt hours of new renewable energy per year to be added to the grid. That's pretty ambitious. Now, that sounds great, but how true is it? Our interest peaked when Phil Schiller, Apple's senior marketing guru, said that the new iPhones were made to be environmentally friendly because there's no such thing as an eco-friendly phone, particularly one without a battery that's easily changeable. For a phone to be truly environmentally friendly, you need it to be repairable and recyclable. It's pretty simple. The more easily repaired phones there are, the longer they last, and the more users there are before a phone reaches its end. The most concrete, direct method of reducing the negative environmental effects of mining raw materials and e-waste is to increase product lifespan. The battery and the display assembly are the two most likely to malfunction and need repair. So it was encouraging when the iPhone 5 achieved a high point in terms of repairability when for the first time a user could switch out components so long as they had a Penelope driver for Apple's exclusive screw. They're not making it too easy, are they? So is it right to claim that their products are green after all? Up next, let's look at Apple's average battery life. We all know this. How frequently you use your phone determines how long it'll survive. According to Apple's estimations, a Mac can be used for 4 years and an iDevice for 3 years, which amounts to 9.3 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions, or 30% of all emissions produced by Apple. iPhones typically don't last that long without a battery change. According to Apple, the battery of an iPhone lasts for about 400 cycles or full charges. So when someone went ahead and disassembled the most recent iPhones, they were disappointed to discover glue all over their batteries. Both phones' batteries needed heat and prying to open up, which isn't the ideal procedure for something that might release toxic gases if punctured. So these gadgets have death clocks that are permanently stuck to them, a business that blatantly states that its most recent products are ecologically friendly shouldn't obstruct such regular upkeep. Moving on to the dreaded plastics. How does Apple fare? Apple takes great pride in recycling efforts, predicting a global recycling rate of 70%. But that proportion is predicated on a 7-year product lifespan. Consider this to see how false it is. How many people do you know who still use an iPhone that came out 7 years ago? Given their now iconic glass and metal construction, Apple's iPhones have at least always been made from recyclable materials. But their products like iPhone 5C with its Play-Doh-inspired color scheme may make recycling more challenging. Why? Take iPhone 5 for example. It has 14 grams of polycarbonate, which is difficult to recycle. Every port, button, and slider now has plastic instead of its metal counterparts. To break down polycarbonate materials for reuse, chemical recycling is necessary. The lacquer coating on the iPhone's polycarbonate case strengthens and lengthens its lifespan, but this further muddles the already complicated recycling process. The coating would need to be ground off, burned off, or nominated for this plastic to create new phones. Oh, and if you believe that this material will be used on another phone, think again. If we're lucky, it'll land on a park bench. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, there's fact versus fiction. We know that the production of tech products has a significant environmental impact. Each one uses a variety of metals, rare earth, elements, and polymers. These originate from locations all across the world. One of Apple's key objectives is to only use recycled and renewable materials in their products, according to the company's 2021 Environmental Progress Report. This is another ambitious objective that'd be extremely advantageous for the environment. Unfortunately, they're still far from succeeding in this. Only about 12% of the materials they use are currently recycled. The newly introduced MacBook Air uses 40% recycled materials, which is great, and it appears that they're using more recycled materials every year. Their report claims that one of the issues is a shortage of recycled cobalt, glass, lithium, and a substance called tantalum. On the other hand, there are stark differences when you look at Samsung, one of their main rivals in the smartphone market. Samsung has vowed to use more recycled paper and plastic in their phones. They've also committed to utilizing more recycled plastic. Now, there's also packaging and transport to consider. Even though the production of these products is the main issue, there may be issues with the product's delivery and the packaging it ships in. By 2025, Apple wants to use 100% recyclable materials in their packaging and completely do away with plastics. On this one, they've been making good progress. We have to give them that. From 21% in 2015 to only 6% in 2020, less plastic has been used in their packaging. 59% of the fibers are recycled, which is a fantastic start. The remaining portion likewise originates from sustainably managed forests. They claim to be actively pursuing the adoption of more low-carbon modes of transportation, such as rail for transportation. Apple also strives to collaborate with carbon-neutral carriers for delivery in regions like Europe, such as companies that deliver on bikes. It isn't easy to verify because there doesn't seem to be any specific information about this. But given that most of their items are built in Asia and are typically flown there, their transportation practices are probably not that environmentally friendly. But by shrinking the size of their container, they've made some progress. For instance, they can transport 70% more phones on the same pallet by considerably reducing the size of the iPhone 12 packaging. Finally, for the end of the product life. what happens to the product once you are done using it, for whatever reason, has a significant role in the overall environmental cost. A huge amount of the product's materials would be wasted if it ended up in regular trash. To Apple's benefit, there's a sizable market for used Apple products. With the help of its refurbishment program, Apple repairs outdated iPhones so that they can continue to be used for many years. iPhones can be used for 5 to 10 years and transferred to many owners. So yes, in that way, they score well on the green meter. In a perfect world, all the components in finished goods would be disassembled, recycled, and used to create new items. But this problem isn't exclusive to Apple. E-waste recycling is still far behind. We think Apple still has a long way to go, and for all you know, they'll be able to become completely green by 2030. Fingers crossed! That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Apple can achieve that target by 2030? Let us know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.